Good day. Yesterday I watched the movie Snow White, and I'm going to do a bit of a paint over here. And let me be very frank. What I'm about to paint over is not going to be a reflection of how I felt about the movie. Okay. This is going to be pretty, it's going to be pretty hardcore. I'm going to be painting it as if I'm doing some creature design stuff. So it's going to look pretty much insane. But that being said, let's get into my thoughts. Yeah, so overall, I think the movie's fine. I didn't really have any negative opinions about it. Let's start off with some of the things I really liked about the movie. I mean, as an artist, I really freaking loved a lot of the visual effects. There was some stuff that I think it's like, okay, yeah, it looks pretty green screen. And there's always a saying of like good visual effects is visual effects you don't even notice, you know? And so when you start to notice the visual effects, it can kind of take you out of it. And I think there was definitely a bit of that here and there, but it wasn't anything that I wasn't used to. And honestly, I could forgive that kind of stuff if a lot of other things are going well, you know? And in this instance, there was just a lot of stuff that I felt visually speaking, I was okay with. I was like, yeah, okay, I'm okay with this. In terms of like the dwarves, I think a lot of people, I think I had a friend, I talked about this in a different video. He's like, oh, the dwarves look like so stupid. And as I was watching it, like part of me was like, okay, well, let me just look at this without worrying about what somebody else told me. In fact, a lot of times I watch movies just based off of the trailer, not by any other reviews or any other external factors. Because some people's opinions are just that, just opinions. And I don't want to like get caught up in this perspective of like, I have to like be careful of people's opinions influencing my actual like feeling about a movie. I used to just go watch a movie with like no other opinion other than just like, oh, that looked cool, and then just watch it and then have a opinion afterwards. And I think nowadays everybody wants to have an opinion even before they even watch the movie, and it's just like it seems so excessive. And it's very clear again the motives why you want to do this. It's very clickbaity. I mean, even I have a suspicion that my thumbnail, because it's gonna be like freaking monstrous version of Snow White, is gonna get people to be like, "What the? Like he must have hated it." You know, like look what he did. It's like, no, I like to do monster designs. So I decided to do a bit of monster design. Maybe some other ones. Maybe if it's like a monster film, I will do something a lot more tame. So it's always going to be kind of what you don't expect to see from the actual source material. I'm not that kind of artist, or it's like, oh, there's a subtle commentary about how he felt in the way he painted this. It's like, no, this is how I paint. Sometimes I do very fun, heartwarming, illustrative work, but most of the time I draw some stuff that's would scare your children. Yeah, so I kind of removed the noise. I realized that I don't want to like make this a photo bash painting, so I did something called Smart Blur, and it just basically keeps a lot of the hard edges, makes it feel more painterly, and that's what I want to do. I don't want to have to worry about this being more realistic. I want this to feel as if I painted all of this. Anyway, let's increase some of the contrast too, so I can get some of those deep, dark blacks. So yeah, like I didn't want to have any other opinions going in about how the dwarves were, but I did hear my friend, like he was telling me like, ah, and he was even saying like, you would have done a better job. And I don't know if that's true. I think, and this is just me speaking as a fellow artist, I think a lot of the artistry on this, people did a really good job. I think the lighting, the cinematography was freaking great a lot of the time. The color palettes felt like a painting. Like it felt as if the art direction and production designers knew they wanted to feel more illustrative. Like it felt like the movie was through the lens of an illustrator. You know? Obviously it's still live action, but it felt like there was an illustrator touch to it, and I like that. I liked how that felt, especially like the whistle while your work scene where the dwarves are cleaning up after themselves. It's incredibly like well lit in a way where the colors are softer. There's no harsh lighting. It felt very illustrative, and I was like, wow, this is really cool. It felt like if you took a screenshot of it and then did this kind of this filter on there, or did like a painterly texture filter on that shot or the scenes, it would look like, yeah, like a classical oil painting. And I really enjoyed that. I enjoyed how that felt. That felt really cool to me. And so the dwarves, I think, suffer from specifically this thing that I think commonly happens with just CG in general and visual effects and computer graphics and 3D modeling is that, like, okay, coming from this perspective of as an art director, what I probably would have told the visual effects team or the 3D artists was to kind of soften the specularities and the like basically the pores. Like what ends up happening with like a lot of really great modelers is that they'll like model it like maybe too accurate. It's like a little bit too contrasty on the forms and on the details. So then they just kind of stand out more. It's like we're trying to make it feel more realistic, but in reality, here, let's look back at the original source material. You can see, like, even though she's like a younger, more fair person, like in cinema and live action, the pores aren't like exaggerated. So this seems to me more obvious when you look at the characters like the dwarves, where you're like seeing every little pore because it was probably rendered and composited on top of everything, right? Instead of being softly lit and then going through some basic filtering. Like what I think would have been better was to just do that in the modeling, you know, like soften the details and the tertiary forms in the modeling from the first place, and then use editing to help kind of balance between the two. Because it almost feels like, let me show you what I mean. Like, let's imagine we just took this. I think Smart Sharpen will do a good job of demonstrating my point here. Like it's like this. Like it's like a little bit more. Like look at all these little pieces of noise that we're picking up. You know, where it's a lot softer, and I feel like the edges are just harder. And because of this, it doesn't really blend as well. Like if you look at like Avatar, why those 3D models and those like characters, like they don't have that exaggerated kind of and they are absolutely more realistic, you know. And I think that's because a lot of what happens there is that James Cameron is also an artist, so he can kind of have the eye for this type of stuff. So I think a compositor, a visual effects team, like, and the directors and all the people in charge are so disconnected that they don't have this ability to have kind of like this larger cohesion. And the 3D modelers might know that this is the case. They might actually believe in everything that I'm saying. They might agree with it. But then it's handed off to somebody who might not see that, might not have that knowledge. They have knowledge of like how to put things together. You know, it's complicated. It's a complicated process to make something look incredible. And so, but if I was in the room, I probably would have been like, yeah, you can stop it. Like the edges feel a little too hard. But in terms of the artistry of the modeling, and the artistry of like the acting and the animation of those dwarves, bro, it was great. That was incredibly well done. I was like, this is super cool. Dopey was my favorite. Like, such an expressive character. Really empathized with it, even though I knew it was not real, not a real person. I was like, this is incredible. This is so good. This feels like some badass portfolio piece. Like if I would have saw that on ArtStation, which is a popular portfolio website for artists, I would have been like, dang, dude. You know, and in fact, I think a lot of people would be like, dang, that looks awesome. You know, but in the context of the film, people are like, "Rah, rah, rah," because they have a lot of feelings about the movie. So that's kind of where my compliments in terms of the visuals lie. Oh, the costume design of the Queen was freaking baller. Loved it. And I think like her dining room scene was super awesome. Great set design. So I think again, artistically, I had really no notes other than some of the stuff I just mentioned. Maybe a little bit better compositing, a little bit better like working between departments. Uh, that could have probably helped. But anyway, um, trying to think what I'm gonna do with this. I'm gonna yeah, stick out a tongue. That'd be cool. So, whoops. Let me put these on its own layer so that way I can kind of keep the sharpness. This is so funny. Uh, so in terms of the storytelling, yeah, I was okay with it. I wasn't gonna be like, um, I wasn't gonna be one of those people. Like I saw a lot of people, at least like the thumbnails and the what you call it, the titles of their reviews, just like this is trash or this is garbage, you know. And some people that I like their opinions on it, they weren't happy with it either. And I was like, okay. And so after kind of like just looking through all that, I was like, yeah, I don't know, man. I don't think this is accurate. And one thing that I like to do is after I watch a movie, and I ask myself like, what did I think? And I thought it was okay. I didn't really hate it. I didn't think it was garbage. I felt fine. My kids liked the movie. I think my youngest one really liked the movie a lot. He's cracking up during almost all the dwarf scenes. Um, my wife liked it a lot. My kind of middle-aged kids, like between like 10 to 14 age range, they were just like, yeah, it's all right. You know, they didn't. I think they had a similar opinion than I did, but they weren't like, God, that was so stupid. You know, sometimes they would say that, like that movie was not good. Um, but I think they're just like me. We like watching movies, you know, and so um, I went to like Rotten Tomatoes just to see kind of what other people were saying about it, specifically audience scores, and it was around like in the mid 70s, like 75. And that to me feels right. That feels like how I felt about the movie. And then like the critic reviews, which I almost never honestly take seriously. I like never take seriously. I look at the user scores. If the user scores are really low, um, that tends to tell me that the movie probably isn't that good. Um, and I try to keep in mind all like the stuff that goes on outside of the movie that sometimes people don't like the people that are in the movie, which is unfortunate. But in this instance, it seemed pretty fair. It seemed like the same way I felt about the movie that a lot of other people felt about it, story wise. Like it was okay. Like it was kind of your run of the mill Disney movie. It didn't do anything that I felt was shocking. I didn't expect it to. It was based off of a classic Disney movie called Snow White. Like, why would it? You know? And in that regard, I think they almost nailed it. Like, it's a modern version of it in live action. And there are some movies that make a lot of sense to me to go to live action. I felt like Mulan was one of those movies. Although I felt Mulan, I actually did not like that movie, the live action one. I didn't hate it, but I didn't feel like it was something I would watch ever again. Um, because the first Mulan movie, like the animated one, is like is one of my favorite, like not only my favorite animated movies, just one of my favorite movies. It's such a great movie, and I'll actually bring it up in my critique of Snow White. So anyway, um, so let's talk about like kind of, and this is a bit of spoilers for those of you who might still want to go watch the movie, and for those of you who've never seen Snow White ever. So I don't remember the old animated film, so it was kind of nice, like to kind of just go in and just be, oh yeah, I'm just gonna treat this like a movie. And with that, um, there's a couple things that I felt that they may have like had a missed opportunity, and this is something that I kind of see in modern films these days. Back in like the golden era of like filmmaking, like you know Spielberg's, uh, Lucas's, and so forth and so on. Like during that time where Jerry Bruckheimer, you know what I mean? even like early Michael Bay films, and all the directors of that. And I think Marvel movies, like the first rendition of the Marvel Cinematic Universe that we all loved, that ended with Endgame, echoed kind of the merits of old film making and storytelling. And what that is, simply put, is just to kind of have like something to teach the audience. You know, like something needs to be taught to the audience. And what I don't mean is like you tell them what they need to know. Like you should have them learn it through the lens of the characters, and ideally the protagonist. You know, and what am I? What do I mean by this? Well, I mentioned Mulan was one of my favorite films, so let's talk about what Mulan did really well, and then we'll talk about the missed opportunities with the Snow White movie. And I think why, honestly, I don't know if it could have ever been any better unless they would have actually taken this risk that I'm going to probably propose. And I don't think they ever would have, and I don't know if they should have. I actually don't know. But anyway, so in Mulan, it's about, you know, this young daughter who doesn't really fit in society. She isn't as feminine as, you know, everyone else around her wants her to be. And so then, you know, she's having a hard time with it. Eventually, you know, the Mongols, I think that's what they were, right? The Khan army was coming. I think that's what they were. I forget exactly. But anyway, this army is coming to invade, you know, China, essentially. And so they're recruiting any and all people who could fight in the war, including her father, who's crippled veteran. And she disguised herself as a young man posturing as his son to kind of get him out of it. And so begins the adventure. She pretends to be a boy, pretends to be a man, the son of her father, and goes on this wild adventure in learning how to be a soldier, and all of the reasons why you think she wouldn't be able to survive it are presented to her, about from the physical challenges to the mental challenges, you know. And it's incredible. It's an incredible insight on what that would be like. But then she ultimately saves all of China, not with her strength, not with her wits, but just with her bravery and her ability to think on her feet, right? A couple attributes that even in the movie kind of portrays that it's not even within somebody of her stature, its ability to do. And one of the most powerful moments in that scene, because, you know, the whole time we're kind of under the veil of like, she really was doing this to save her father. She doesn't want to let her father down. And she feels that she's letting her father down with like not being as feminine, not being able to find a suitor, all of these things. And when she finally shows up and she's like sorry about doing all this stuff, and she's like, well, I got the sword from the emperor, you know, all these things. And the only thing that her father cares about is that his daughter is still alive and safe. Like, he drops the sword and then he grabs her and hugs her. And it's a beautiful moment. And what we learn from the movie is not that being a girl boss is the best, right? No, it's like that's one facet of it. It's like showing that if you have the abilities, you can probably overcome a lot of adversity. It's an incredible demonstration of that. But I think the biggest lesson is the love between the father and the daughter, that she didn't need to ever get his approval, even though it was postured in the beginning of the movie, that he, at the end of the day, loves his daughter deeply, and that she was always deserving of his love, right? And he made the mistake. He was the problem, that he didn't demonstrate that earlier on for her to know that, you know? And it all comes to a head at the end of the movie. We all feel it. And it's so powerful when they, like, because she literally saved China and he does not care. He's like, I fucked up, dude. Like, I made the mistake for making you think that you were never enough, right? Like, all the movie does is talk about her not being enough. From the songs, like the epic song Reflection, from the song about like being a man, like how Like you gotta live up to these standards, and like even all the secondary characters are like following suit in these same kind of stereotypes and expectations. So this is why I think this movie is a fucking banger, because it compounds this point at almost every facet of the movie. Oh yeah, like even her like boyfriend dude, like trying to leave it to his dad, right? Like everything is about this point and just kind of solves and makes you see that at the end of the day, like the people around you should take you in for who you are and love you for what you are, right? And it's just told elegantly through the lens of Mulan. Okay? Okay. So, what is Snow White about, right? It doesn't really have this. This is what I'm saying. Like, there was a missed opportunity because they had seeds of something that they could have done. So, there's a couple things that happen, right? One, her parents are awesome and they bring like freaking beauty and vibrance to their communities, and like they're beloved amongst their peoples. They're trying to teach their daughter what it's like to be a ruler and to be a good and kind ruler. So they set this up. You're okay. I'm following. Gotcha. Right? And then eventually, the mom dies, which creates tragedy. Gotcha. And then the evil queen lady or the evil witch basically seduces the king, and then essentially makes him go to his death, and so he dies. And then now Snow White's orphaned, and you got this kind of evil stepmom situation going on. Gotcha. So during all of this, I was like, okay, I get the conflict. The conflict is very shallow. It's just bad lady taken, like parents died, bad lady taken over. Got it. But from there on out, it's just pretty much bad lady's trying to kill Snow White because Snow White's just better than her. She's just, according to this, a lot prettier or a lot more fair is the kind of the phrase. And at the end of the movie, the premise is like, no. When we said fair, like she is beautiful from the inside. Like that matters more than anything. Which at the end of the movie doesn't really make a lot of sense, because during the movie, the entire time they kept on saying that, no, you're the fairest evil witch lady. If the mirror was like thinking, no, the inner beauty matters, this person would have been constantly saying, no, you are absolutely like not tight. There would have never been a moment where that would have been the case, right? Anyway, which they do towards the end, like they start to kind of double down on this. So what I'm trying to get across is that is just too little for us to really, as an audience, care about anything that's happening to Snow White and to the kingdom and everything else around. Like it's not enough. So what makes me like the movie? Like what made me like think that's fine? It's because at the end of the day they had like lots of beautiful moments, and there's like lots of small stuff, and there was some humor that made me and my children laugh, and there was just it was just pleasant. Like it was a great movie to watch. It was great visuals and a lot of moments. Some really awesome songs, like a couple songs I really liked a lot. So it was entertaining, but it wasn't like I wasn't going to leave that theater thinking I learned anything meaningful, nor do I care to watch it again, right? Like it's not going to elevate me in my thinking in any meaningful way. And some movies, honestly, can be that. But this is the catch. I think this is why maybe this critique holds, in my opinion, is because Disney is known to kind of do this. I just mentioned Mulan. Mulan is an incredible example of elevating a message and still be entertaining, right? They had like Mushu the Dragon by Eddie Murphy. He was hilarious, right? Aladdin also had a lot of elevation to it. It wasn't nearly as shallow. Shallow. Lion King is an incredible tale, about betrayal and your responsibilities to your people. Like a lot of that is very clear in that film, and it had like some dark themes that are like that hit differently as you get older. And so to me, it's like, and then obviously Pixar follows suit. They're in the same kind of umbrella of storytelling, and they are obviously notorious for elevation in their storytelling. Like one of the movies that just came out with Inside Out 2 was took on anxiety, right? I was like, damn, dude, this is gonna be a challenge, and I think they did it beautifully. I love that movie. The movie was so well done, and such a great representation of anxiety. You know, even my wife, when she has anxiety, she was watching that movie. She was getting anxiety when they're talking about anxiety. She's like, "Oh my god, this is giving me anxiety," and she was crying when there were moments where they were rectifying the anxiety because it meant something to her. You know, so this is not a critique of like, oh, you guys need to be the next, Shawshank Redemption, where it's like this really strong and mature themes. It's like, no, meaningful storytelling that audiences of all ages will really love. Because as far as I can tell, this is almost entirely made just for a younger audience who might not need to know these deeper things. But as they get older, there's just going to be nothing for them to attach themselves to, you know? And so they had this thing though, where the parents, like there's this moment where the dad gets on his knees and he's basically trying to teach his daughter, like the mom and dad are both trying to teach their daughter a couple things. It's, I believe it was being fearless, being brave, being fair, and being true. Like there's like four of these things. Now, I think that they could have just kept two of these ideas because being fearless and brave in my mind are the same thing. So story-wise, let's consolidate that. Because the less things we want, like if this is not fucking Power Rangers or like Captain Planet, like we got to put all these things together. Let's keep it simple. Let's like consolidate these ideas and these premises. And so I think that would have been the first place I would have started, which would have been consolidating that. I need to add more tentacles to this. Yeah, consolidating that would have been great. Hold on, let me think about what I'm doing here for a second. Okay, so yeah, bravery and fearlessness. Let's just say being brave, or maybe fearless could be a good word. Either way, pick one of them. And then true and fair also feel like they're the same ideas. True and being fair. But because the evil witch lady constantly is like, who's the fairest of them all, then Snow White should just dominate this every single time. And it basically gives you the stick the landing moment of like at the end where she is truly being the most fair. You know what I mean? And so what we do here is make the whole movie about bravery or fearlessness and being fair, or being being true to who you are, or being fair in the sense that like letting other people see that there's fairness in the world, like being like there's justice, not injustice, And if you make it all about that, then you just double down on every moment that you get. For instance, when she meets up with the dwarves, maybe that's what their problem is that they don't have fairness, right? They are constantly at odds with each other. They are of different minds. They're like literally cartoonish characteristics of who they are, like dopey, sleepy, grumpy, you know what I mean? So just like double down on that, their inability to kind of coordinate, and that she is really good at getting them to coordinate, right? And then bravery, that she's like brave to kind of like stick up to the man, and the people, her original people, have lost that bravery. They have succumbed to fear, because of this evil step queen lady. You know what I mean? And you just keep doubling down on that. And perhaps what makes Snow White not the fairest at the beginning of the movie, or towards the middle and beginning, is that she's kind of been subservient, you know? And so she has no opportunity to demonstrate her fairness and her bravery, right? She's been basically turned into a slave. And why no one else can be fair is because the queen essentially has turned everyone else evil and has like against their will perhaps even but using manipulative tools like controlling the economy, controlling a military force, you know what I mean, basically putting people in a constant state of being at odds with each other. And it's truly only Snow White who eventually breaks the veil and kind of can become that voice for the people. There's a moment at the end of the movie that I was like, this would have hit so much harder if they would have kind of stuck to these simple premises. And again, I'm not a writer, but this is just my gut reaction, which is that she's like, weren't you a farmer? Weren't you a baker? Like she's going through all the people and it's like, I was, you're right. And they're like snapping out of it. But there's like a montage in the beginning of the film where the queen's like, I just turned people to army. Like, I think we should have had more time with that just to show why that could happen. Like, why people would have lost their way, you know? And how easy it was to lose their way by just manipulating certain aspects of their daily lives, you know? And that's the part where I feel like it was a missed opportunity. And if you would have consolidated these two ideas, again, there's like the scenes with the bandits, like she falls in love with the bandit. And you can kind of put bravery against him. Like you can make it seem like he's not a brave person. Like he is a cowardice person. And just double down on that. Make it very clear. Like there's a moment where he immediately is already trying to save her and defend her. Like he takes an arrow for her. Make it so he doesn't take an arrow for her. Make it seem like he isn't that brave. He's like, we got to just run. But she's constantly like, no, bitch, fight, you know? And then maybe she takes an arrow for him. And this is kind of where the idea of taking chances that Disney probably just would never have done. Because it would have just broken from the form of the original film. And this is where I'm like, I am at a impasse. Like I have a conundrum that I don't know how to answer. Because at one level, I can be pitching this idea to you guys, and you guys may be like, yeah, this actually makes a lot of sense. And many of you guys might have your own perspectives and compound what I'm saying to even amplify the ideas better, right? To kind of sit with me and be like, no, I think you're right about this, Adrian, but this is also something that maybe should have been considered. Totally, okay, whatever. But the problem that I think Disney and even like some of these larger IP holders have, and I'll be fair to them, I don't know how to answer this question, is that they are kind of stun locked with nostalgia. Like people already have feelings clearly about these IPs. I mean, people lost their goddamn minds with The Little Mermaid when they casted that black actress. I forget her name. I watched that movie and I thought it was cool. Like that movie, I didn't really have any harsh criticisms of any kind. I didn't think that it was the best movie I've ever seen either. But I could watch that movie again. I'd be okay with that. I literally was like not bothered by it by no meaningful metric. And this argument of like, well, you know, the actress shouldn't have been black. Like this is like just such a weird argument to me. It's like, who cares? Truly, who cares? If you don't like it, then just watch the originals. I remember when Old Boy, the American version came out, and it had Josh Brolin in it. I love that actor, but the original character is Korean. I wasn't like losing sleep because they casted a white actor to play a Korean character. I just didn't watch the movie. I actually did not care to watch that movie because it didn't make any sense. Because the original movie isn't that old. Like it's not like 30-year-old film redone. And I was like, okay, let's see this new take. You know what I mean? Like it's the original is super, super good. And it's still pretty modern. You know, like it's not that like audience today's could watch it today, it would hold up. That's what I'm saying. Like it makes a lot of sense. I can see, let's say, a movie like The Godfather being redone. That might feel like blasphemy, but that movie is old enough that it could have a bit of a new take that I think can hold in this new kind of cultural environment. I think that's fine. And depending on what I see in the trailer, we'll decide whether I want to watch or not. But I saw the trailer of Old Boy, and I was just like, "Nah, I'm all right with it." I didn't want to watch it, not because no other reason, because I've already seen Old Boy. That's how I felt. And so with the live action films, like they are obviously trying to capitalize on nostalgia, but at what cost, you might think, on the original source material. And this is where I feel like I don't know if they will take these chances. I don't know. Unless these movies truly start to flop, or maybe they take an IP that people like kind of remember being okay, and then they redid it, and then just it became so much better than the original source material, then maybe people over at Disney would take more chances on these original IPs. But I think they've already kind of set the formula. Like we're trying to stick to a lot of the original vibes of the older movies, that then you're kind of like screwed if you take that big chance, right? Think of like a film franchise like Batman, where they're constantly changing it up, right? The last Batman incarnation was like an emo Batman, right? And people were like, "Oh, Batman's not emo," but then a lot of people watched the movie, and it did well. Like, I liked it a lot. I thought it was super cool. I didn't mind emo Batman, and for what it's worth, I'm kind of emo myself, so I'm into emo stuff, you know. And if there's ever a character to be emo, it makes a lot of sense to me that young Bruce Wayne would be emo. And so, but I also loved Christopher Nolan's Batman, right? And I also loved, Michael Keaton's Batman. You know, Tim Burton's rendition of Batman. You know what I mean? Like, they took chances with each incarnation of these Batman movies. I love it. Same thing with Spider-Man, you know, which now one of my favorite Spider-Man films of all time exists, which is the Miles Morales Spider-Man, which is from the Spider-Verse. I love those movies. I think those are the best Spider-Man stories that I've ever seen, ever. And what I'm trying to get across to you guys is that, like, I think they need to find a way to stick to the original source material. They can't take too many chances. They just can't. They can take a couple side quests and detours within the source material, but if they go too far, they might feel like people would be really upset. And in my mind, it's like, well, then that's why you just got to make sure that this script, that this story that you're telling is, you know, respecting the source material. Like, what was the kind of the heart and spirit of Snow White from the beginning? That she's the most fairest, she's like this pure of heart individual. Then literally make every aspect of the movie try to fight her on that, like really hard, to almost to the point where the audience, when she takes a bite out of the apple, the audience thinks themselves, "Fuck, dude, life isn't fair," because she's still lost. Like, if you've never watched any of the movie, like, you realize, or you don't know anything about the kind of original source material, you would have end that moment feeling like she's still fucking lost. Like, you know, in the Matrix, when Neo is finally believing that he might be the one, and Morpheus and everyone else is like, "Damn, this is tight." Everyone's like, he's got it. He goes but he finally tries to escape. He goes out to the room to get the answer to the phone, and then sure enough, Agent Smith's right there and just unloads a clip. I believe it was Agent Smith. Had to be. And essentially kills Neo, putting the audience in a state of like shock, because we're like, yeah, I think he's got it. Like, he's going to come out of this. And they said, nah, he doesn't. He actually dies. And now we're like, wait, what? You know? Everyone can't believe it. The look on Morpheus's face is like, bro, what? How is this possible? Like, he was the chosen one. And like the Sentinels are ripping apart their ship, sparks flying everywhere. The agents have won. There's no hope in sight. And what ends up happening is a bit of Snow White, you know? The Princess Charming comes and kisses Neo, essentially waking him up, right? But with the premise of, like, you know, you're supposed to be the chosen one because the oracle said that I would fall in love with the chosen one, which is kind of sappy, but it's like a bit of a Hail Mary play from the writer's perspective, which I'm okay with, because that moment where he like it could have been kind of like a temporary reboot, who knows? But that moment where he gets up, he sees the Matrix, it's now true. There is no doubt he is the chosen one. It hits hard because the entire film, he doesn't believe he's the chosen one. Everyone else around him doesn't believe he's the chosen one, except for Morpheus and probably like secretly Trinity, you know. But she's having her doubts, you know. She's very nihilistic, which is fine. That's what that character was supposed to do, to kind of like be the perspective of the audience, maybe. But even Neo didn't believe it. Like the agents don't believe it. Like nobody believes it. And even when Neo does believe, he gets killed, right? And then finally, the person that mattered, that needed to believe it, kind of wakes him up, right? Anyway, and it just hits, bro. Right? We're like, damn. And I believe this could have been a similar thing, like Snow White, the Matrix, right? Literally, she loses her family, but make it meaningful, like make it sad. Like when Frozen, when their parents die, it's sad, dude. Make it truly sad, not just kind of a montage. Like, make me sad that her parents died. Show me why I should be really sad about this. Show me why, like in Frozen, like Elsa doesn't want to be around. Oh, dude, what was her name? I already forget the other character's name. Damn. But anyways, Elsa doesn't want to go to her sister because she's the one that gave her. She's like constantly reminded of the mark that or the hair, like the rogue hairstyle that she gave her, and then also her parents essentially died because they're trying to find the cure to this, you know. So it's just like, it's just compounded that Elsa's evil, but she's not. You know, it's like compounded the entire time, dude. And so compounded here, like she's trying to be fair, she's trying to be brave, but she keeps getting punished for it via the storytelling. And they do have moments where it's like, okay, you know, they want to kill her, but she's not like, she gets away, and it's at no real consequence. She runs into some dwarves at no real consequence. She's being hunted down by the guards, but at no real consequence. The only real consequence is when she finally eats the apple. But at that point, I'm like, again, this would have hit harder if, like, you as an audience member, just like, it's not fair. Like she's truly trying to solve these problems, and she's truly making these moves, and she's thwarted in every level, other than the fact that her evil stepmother essentially is just like mean to her, you know. Like she needs to demonstrate more aggressively and more assertively that these things are happening to her, and that she's truly out of control of these consequences, you know. And again, I'm not a writer. I can't think of some good examples outside of what was already in the movie, other than taking those moments that they put and compounding it, you know, truly compounding it. Let me think of it like a moment where it's like maybe when her dad gets killed or murdered, goes off in a war or whatever, because again, it's kind of just a montage. Maybe there's a moment there, right, where she talks with her dad and she's like it's not fair, like you need to stay here. So maybe she isn't always been this way, she's kind of been selfish a little bit, right? And dad's like, never lose who you are, like always remember, you know. Maybe on a deathbed of her mom says like, don't ever forget. And there's just all these moments where she's kind of told to forget, and then the two instances where it mattered the most, the people are telling you no, but then they die. And then from there on out, just show more scenes where the evil queen lady is like doing lots of unfair stuff, and Snow White is trying to circumvent it more and more and more and more throughout the film. And then when she's interacts with the dwarves, use that as another example or metaphor of this, you know. And then eventually, as all these things start to come together, like right when she starts to talk to the people at the end, and she's like, "Hey, you know, I should be." Like, don't you remember you were a farmer? Like, remember in the beginning of the movie, she would have talked to them because we showed that, and she was trying to help them out. But they're like, you don't get it, Snow White. Like, if I don't do this, my family starves, right? Like, you don't get it, Snow White. Like, the reason the king died is because we didn't have a military force, you know? Like, just all of these things to kind of like demonstrate to her that she's naive. But within that naiveness, that honest and pure of heart is what matters. Like, I always hear this argument online about facts don't care about your feelings a lot. You know, it's a very politically charged statement. But what bothers me about that statement is that facts only matter if we're trying to keep account of people's feelings. Like, I don't want to hurt people because the fact says otherwise, right? We, at the end of the day, we try to use real and truthful information to navigate this world ethically, right? To help people out. I always like to use this example of somebody who might be really unhealthy and, let's say, overweight, and you want to help them out, and they want to be helped. They've accepted that there's something that they need to do about it. And if you go up to them and you just say, "Hey, you're gonna die because you're obese," everything about that statement might be true, but that's fucking mean, dude. Like, absolutely, it's mean, dude. And so there's a better way. There's a more ethical, more kind, more earnest way to talk to people, keeping in mind things that are true, you know? Like, the way I teach is very similar to this. Like, whenever I teach people art, like, I always say, you know, at the end of the day, only things you have control over is your portfolio and the people that know you have good portfolio. All this other stuff around it it's really hard for me to tell you that it's going to work or not work, you know? Because that's the only way I can try to give meaningful advice to people that I think will resonate. And then any specific advice I can only give is when I look at your work and look at your progress. You know what I mean? And it's an effective teaching tool because I'm meeting people where they're at versus like, you got to grind all day, hustle, 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 hustle. It's like, okay, sure, you got to work really hard, but you also have to have balance. You know, if you overtrain a muscle, you'll tear the muscle, you know? And it's the same kind of premise that I think Snow White could have done. Like, it could have came from that idea, like, facts don't care about your feelings, but demonstrate why feelings also still matter, like why we should care about one another. And we should start to understand that some things are worth sacrificing for the greater good, and some things are worth considering for the greater good. That could have been the moral, the story, manifested and embodied within the character Snow White and everything around her. Because to me, everything felt just a little too shallow, just felt a little too surface level, and it's okay. Because I don't think at the end of the day it needed to be more than that. But as I mentioned earlier, Disney movies tend to be, you know, the kinds of films that absolutely find a way to do this. Absolutely try to have a meaningful thing to talk about, right? They're not trying to just teach children, like whatever. Like, even the most shallowest of movies, like what was it? Like, from Pixar specifically, like Cars. They also still have a message, right? Like, it's like about ego and about thinking that you're essentially better than everyone else. It's very simple. It's very, you know, again, in lack of a better term, shallow, but it's good. It's still like is a good message to talk about. It's still good moral to stand on, and it makes people remember. You know, they're like, "This is cool. This is a cool movie." even a movie like Tangled, which had like the similar kind of premise of like somebody is trying to keep you away from the world and you're just a pure of heart, right? At the end of the day, Rapunzel makes one of the most ultimate sacrifices. She cuts her hair, right? To essentially kill her stepmom. You know what I mean? And it's like a really powerful moment because she's trying to do it to save her boyfriend, you know? And he dies, but then her purity brings him back to life. It's great. It's cool. Very simple. I'm okay with it. That was a great movie. Let's move on with our lives. I don't think every Disney movie or every Pixar movie has to be fucking bangers, but at least have something like that. And I think if this movie would have done that, honestly, I think that 75 could have been an 85, right? I think people would have left that movie like, oh, this is actually not bad at all. Like, this is a really cool commentary on this idea that we're all kind of wrapped around currently, politically, right? I think a lot of people are lacking empathy for one another. Like, there's a lot of like shallow disagreement when at the end of the day, if we all just hung out at bars and we just met each other outside of the internet and met each other at like a social gathering that we all shared, which I constantly experience whenever I go to events. Like, I meet people that I know I politically and strongly disagree with, but we like are laughing or having a good time, like, which tells me we have more things in common than we disagree with. But when we're living on the internet, it just kind of creates this like cesspool. And I think with the Snow White, it had an opportunity to kind of maybe have some opinion about that felt relatively neutral, that everybody be like, yeah, we get it. Like, this makes a lot of sense, you know? And I don't think it needed to go deep in it. I don't think it needed to be an art piece commentary. I think it could have just done it in a very simple, very clear and consolidated way. And I think it would have been a great movie, not just an all right movie, in my opinion. It was all right. I don't think it was the greatest film ever. I've seen way better Disney films. Mulan, I just mentioned earlier, is an incredible film. Even to this day, I still fucking cry. Oh, dude, I cry even harder at the end scene. The scene where the father drops the sword. Dude, I'm like in tears. Because I'm thinking, I will never do that to my daughter. I will never let my daughter think that I don't love her and that she's the best, you know? Like, but I get why he was doing that. Like, there's some expectations I have of my children. I also empathize with him. But it's just like, see, he always loved you, man. Your dad's good. Your dad's a good guy. You know? And that part hits me really hard. Another great example of one of my favorite movies that's classic, but that doesn't get as much credit, street credit, as it needs, is the Goofy movie. Another great Disney movie. It's about a father and son's relationship. You know, it's about that preteen age of a child, and I've also experienced that. But even when I was a kid, I loved that movie. But as an adult, I'm like, damn, this hits me even harder again. I cry even further. Because Goofy just wants to be around for his son's life as he's growing old. Like, even right now, I'm just talking about him being teared up. And that's all that movie's about. Like, they go on a family trip. Like, everything Goofy does just feels like he's ruining his son's Max's life, you know? And which vindicates and validates Max's feeling that his dad's a fucking goofball. It's like literally in his name. You know, and it's just entirely pushing that narrative the whole time. And then Max ultimately begins to lie to his father, which ultimately ruins and puts a further wedge between them two, you know. And it shows the relationship with Max's friend's dad, and like its more militant relationship, and the contrast of that, you know. It's all good, man. It's such a great, like, simple road trip story about a father and son and their ability to reconnect. And that's it. That's all that movie's about. When I leave Snow White, like, I'm not sure, like, if I understand why being a fair, true, fearless, brave person, like, other than just telling me that that's a good thing. Like, of course it is, but why? Like, what happened? Other than evil person doing evil things. Okay, cool. Parents dying. All right, gotcha. You got to give the audience a little bit more. And I don't think they needed to do anything hard. Consolidate those two ideas, bravery and fairness, and then make everything compound those two ideas. And they could have dropped a couple musical acts that I don't think did any favors in that, right? Yeah, a couple I'm already thinking of. The one with the bandit and the one with the queen. I think those two could have just dropped completely. The one where she sings about having, like, wishing for things to be great is fucking awesome, because it's kind of like saying, you know, wishful thinking, it only gets you so far. And then at the end, she's like, I'm done with wishful thinking. I think that's pretty cool crescendo. Um, you know, like, it's great to say that we're brave and we are in fairness, but if the world doesn't give a fuck, like, it then demands action. Like, that sounds tight. That sounds like a great premise. So anyway, yeah, I thought the movie's okay. If you guys like meaningful, deep, conversational based movies, I don't think this movie's for you. If you have kids, I'm sure they'll like it. You feel free to go watch it and just use them as an excuse. That's what I did. Otherwise, I would have absolutely not watched it. Even the original, I don't think I watched, because it was not. It was just not for me. So I have to understand that I'm like a specific audience demographic. But anyway, hope this review and rant in this painting that I did was interesting to y'all. And if you guys do like it, let me know. And if you have some of your own opinions and thoughts about what could have been in the film, great, especially if you watched it. If you haven't watched it, I mean, I'm curious why you didn't feel like you wanted to watch it. And again, I think there's like some arguments about like the person, the actress. This to me is meaningless. Unless this person's truly a despicable, evil person. I think people are allowed to have opinions that you might feel are naive or ill-informed. I think that's fine, man. Like, we got to take it easy on each other, you know? I remember during the Star Wars films, people were trashing that Asian actress. And I'm like, God, dude, why are people so mean? Like, you don't even know this person. You know what I mean? And so it's like, I think I saw a couple videos of her saying some stuff, and I was like, I can see why people dislike that. But I didn't lose sleep at night. I was like, yeah, it's just a young actress that has an opinion. Cool. You know what I mean? Like, genuinely, that stuff doesn't really bother me unless it's, like, again, pretty deplorable. That starts to kind of affect my feelings about that person and things that they do. Probably the greatest example, I don't think this is too controversial, which is like Kanye West saying that he's a Nazi. This to me is pretty unacceptable. I am not a big fan of this. And so I do not like this guy. And I do not want to support him in a lot of the things he does. But that's pretty clean cut. He's saying he loves Hitler, you know? It's like, what in the world? And so yeah, I remember too. What did he say? Like, slavery was a choice. I think that was like actually the time that I was just like, all right, like, peace out, bro. It was nice knowing you. Like, stuff like this is kind of just bonkers. And then some people, if you're one of those people that are like, no, that's still based, I don't know what to tell you then. Like, you're too far gone. But someone that has just like pretty milquetoast opinions about the world, okay. Are we going to really be crazy about this? And so to me, I have no hard feelings about the people involved in this movie. I think all the visual effects were incredibly well done. Some stuff could have been done better. Some stuff, I think they nailed it with the source material, right? No notes. Good job, team. And yeah, I mean, even this shot before my paint over, like, look at the lighting. Like, this is actually great. This is incredible. This is really beautiful. You know, regardless of how you feel about the actress in the movie and all that stuff, like, that's incredibly well lit, in great colors. So anyway, hope you guys enjoyed this, and if you do, maybe I'll make more. Not often, because I don't want to be a movie reviewer artist either. But I do think this is fun, and I will do it when it makes sense to. This is just the latest movie I saw, and I felt like it would be fun to talk about. Cheers.